thank y'all so much for being here today and for this important conversation. So anti-Semitism existed on campus before October 7th, but we all know it has increased tremendously since then. Let's just start by talking a little bit about how things look differently now. So Julia, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Hi, my name is Julia Jassey. I am the CEO and co-founder of Jewish on Campus, an organization that I started heading into my sophomore year of college, addressing the rise of anti-Semitism here in the US. I just graduated last year, so it hasn't been too long since we've started. My experience back in 2020 and the experience of college students now in 2024, there are aspects that are the same and aspects that are different. We've seen for years a rise in anti-Semitism on two fronts. One that is traditional, that attacks Jews as Jews, that makes us feel other and ostracized because of our identities, and one that is becoming louder as time goes on, that attacks Jews under different names. So as Zionists, as Israelis, that likes to mask itself as something else, but has actually led to the most covert forms, where we're often excluded from campus spaces, excluded from the places where traditionally we'll want to be a part of. Yeah. What's changed the most since October 7th isn't necessarily the content, it's the volume. So it's impossible now to walk away from anti-Semitism. It's impossible to have reprieve. We'll be seeing students who are excluded from campus spaces or campus groups and clubs and classes, and they'll go home and they'll go on their phones and they'll see on every social media platform that same rhetoric echoed all day, all night, all the time. So what Jewish students are experiencing now, what I saw back in 2020, what we've been experiencing and tracking for the past few years and fighting against, has been not just the rise in content, but the rise in this volume that lets Jewish students feel like they're being excluded from the spaces where they want to belong.
Yeah, thanks. Hannah and Claire, y'all are on campus now. I'd love to hear a little bit of the same question from the campus perspective. Maybe we'll start with Hannah and then Claire.
So I was an undergrad from 2013 to 2017. I started business school the fall of 2022. What we're seeing right now, it's always been there. It's just that now people have the courage to actually be anti-Semitic because they can say slurs like Zionist, et cetera, and target Jewish students holding Israeli flags, which is what's happening on Cal's campus. And there's no behavioral repercussions. There's no sanctions that are being implemented by the university. So one of the underlying themes that I've noticed is that when you're a university and you don't call out hate against Jews, it continues happening until what happened at Berkeley last Monday. You have a riot on campus that's targeting Jews.
We're going to get into that in just a minute. But Claire, from the faculty perspective?
So I spent 5 years on the Berkeley campus, in fact, at the law school there, which was my first academic position, and now nearly 24 years on Penn's campus. I have chaired the Faculty Senate. I have twice chaired the Senate Committee on Academic Freedom. I've been very involved in academic freedom issues on campus. I also run something called, founded and run something called the Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law, which addresses national security and armed conflict issues from the standpoint of ethics and the rule of law. I have never seen anything like this on any academic campus. This is a completely new world. We are in a dire emergency on university campuses. So how to describe to you, you read in the news what's going on, but the atmosphere is unbelievable. People I've worked with for 24 years on campus are now not speaking to me. Why? Well, I made the incredible faux pas of going to Israel in January with a bunch of my faculty colleagues. It was not a political trip. It was actually not even a trip in my capacity as a national security expert and scholar of the law of armed conflict. We just went to show some solidarity with our Israeli colleagues at various Israeli universities and to learn more about what had happened on October 7th. So we toured kibbutzim, we spoke to experts, we spoke to lots of different people to learn more about what had happened. When we came back, we found that there had been an organized effort to protest our trip, though it was not a university trip. And there had been an organized campaign to get alumni to fill out form letters to ask the university to disassociate from our trip, to ask the university to somehow boycott our efforts, though it was not any organized effort. It was just a personal trip that many of us paid for out of pocket. And our deans were flooded with hundreds and hundreds of letters, among other things saying that now the university had to organize a counter trip to Gaza, to which my response was, please be my guest.
Wow.
So that's how it started. It has gone on from there. At the Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law, we have held weekly now, bi-weekly briefings about the situation with regard to the armed conflict in Gaza. We try to involve a lot of different viewpoints, but this work and a lot of the scholarship and op-eds that I write have earned me the dubious label of being a war criminal. And the amount of anti-Semitic hate mail that I personally have received, that other members of that Israel trip have received, has been absolutely stunning to me, like nothing I have encountered. I know a lot of members of the Penn faculty have experienced similar things, and I really can't identify why this is happening other than the fact that we are Jewish faculty members who care about Israel and who care about anti-Semitism on campus.
Wow. I know this is a topic, I'm just sort of looking out in the audience, and I know that this is a topic that's really passionate for so many of us, such a major concern for so many of us, and hearing your stories is really harrowing, and hearing you say they have the courage to be anti-Semitic, I could feel like the gulp in the room. We were talking backstage a little bit about, you were part of this group suing UC-Berkeley about anti-Semitism on your campus, and just last week, Jewish students had to evacuate an event where protests led to physical altercations. You were in class. What events on campus led to this significant step of bringing a lawsuit?
Mm-hmm. What's important to note is that the theme for the lawsuit is rampant, unchecked anti-Semitism. A personal experience that I had was that in October I emailed the provost. I expressed concern about anti-Semitism on campus, and he responded to me, Hannah, how could there be anti-Semitism at Cal when there's so many Jewish faculty, professors, deans, and board members? Receiving an email like that as a Jewish student did not feel really friendly. So when it comes to this lawsuit, that was a result of 30 plus years of anti-Semitism. You mentioned the law school about a year ago. There were almost many different law groups at Cal adopted a resolution, bylaws, where they banned any Zionist speakers, as well as any Jews who are Reform, Conservative, or Orthodox, because Zionism is an integral part of those practices of Judaism. So you have 30 years as JP started at Cal, you have the Zionist bylaws, and then last semester we had 2 different Jewish students physically assaulted when wearing and holding large Israeli flags on campus, and despite sharing evidence, I was the one who created the documents of, okay, here's the policy that was violated, here's the evidence. The university, they refused to call it anti-Semitism, specifically anti-Jewish hate.
Wow.
So again, I want to drive this point of when you don't call out hate against Jews, which is another issue because right now our country doesn't really categorize hate against Jews in a modern way. I was meeting with the DOJ in DC last week, and hate against Jews is only categorized as religious-based. Whereas Islamophobia, it can be anti-Arab, so ethnicity-based, or it can be anti-Islam, which is religious-based. So when you, A, don't call out hate against Jews, and B, we don't have a structure like guardrails in our country around when you go to the police, this is what you're supposed to look at to categorize hate, that's how we get to where we are.
Wow. I'm just thinking about our conversation backstage a little bit too, we were talking about how in January, ADL, Hillel, the Brandeis Center, and Gibson Dunn launched CALL, the Campus Anti-Semitism Legal Line, a free legal protection helpline for students who have experienced anti-Semitism. And to date, we fielded hundreds of incidents, and we're proud to be supporting students with pro bono counsel and representation. So, Professor Finkelstein, can you talk a little more about the legal efforts that are underway to combat anti-Semitism, including Department of Education and congressional investigations, and will any of them actually make a difference for students' experiences?
So we're a little bit in a catch-22 here. The lawsuits are very important, but the problem is that, as many of you may realize, the Department of Education investigation into the University of Pennsylvania was shut down. And the reason it was shut down was because there was a pending lawsuit. Now, the idea was that it was duplicative. And the more lawsuits are brought, the less the Department of Education will look into those incidents, because they will say those issues are already being covered by the lawsuit. So what to do, right? We're in a little bit of a bind on this, and quite frankly, universities are not really afraid of lawsuits. They take a very long time, and they're all going to settle. And they will settle without anybody knowing why they settled, because the confidentiality agreements will all be part of the settlements. But they are worried about Department of Education investigations, because they are very worried about their tax-exempt status. So it is critically important that the Department of Education investigate these issues. That doesn't mean that the lawsuits shouldn't happen, but they have to be done in a very, very strategic, coordinated way. And that's why it's so critical that those of us who are all working, and ADL is so important here, who are all working to combat anti-Semitism, work together so that we don't trip on each other's feet, and that we make sure that we're doing things smartly for maximum effect.
Yeah. I know you also serve on your university's Open Expression Committee, and you're the chair of the Law School's Committee on Academic Freedom. So you have a little bit of an inside perspective. Can you talk a little bit about what universities can and cannot do to address the issues that students are facing?
Okay, so one of the most important things to understand about private universities is, though we talk a lot about the First Amendment and open expression and free speech on campus, we are not bound by the First Amendment. Now, I'm sure that the room is probably fairly divided between those of you who are big First Amendment enthusiasts and those of you who are concerned about the First Amendment. But the legal status is that private universities are not bound by the First Amendment, but they are bound by Title VI. And that means that we cannot be contributing to a hostile environment on campus that deprives Jewish students or any other students of the benefits of an education, the equal benefits of an education across campus. How is that happening? Well, the idea, why we keep repeating this mantra of open expression, free expression, First Amendment rights, we are not looking at the atmosphere that we are creating drop by drop by drop through inaction, through unwillingness to take an even-handed approach to incidents of hate that occur on our campuses. And then we say, well, when it turns to conduct, and I know you all followed the testimony of our former president at Penn and the Harvard president, MIT president, when it turns to conduct, then we'll cut it off. You can't expect to draw the line between speech and conduct as cleanly as that kind of testimony supposes, because when you are in a stew of hate, the spillover from words to conduct is inevitable. And it is happening every day on these university campuses. And what do you do with concepts like harassment? What do you do with stalking? What do you do with intimidation? What do you do with students who are too afraid to go into certain contexts? And by the way, I'll add one more important thing here. It is not just students. Faculty. How can we, Jewish faculty, be leaders for our students when we ourselves are getting doxxed and intimidated, when Instagram posts are going up and getting 3,000 likes in a 48-hour period, accusing us of scholasticide? This happened last week, namely furthering genocide through our scholarship, right?
Wow.
This is a really very serious situation, and universities have to understand the leadership needs to do something about this immediately, or they will undo the educational mission of their universities.
Julia, yeah, that deserves it. Julia, I want to zoom out for a minute. You have a really keen national eye, and Jewish on Campus and ADL, as you know, we just announced an exciting new partnership, joining efforts to promote grassroots education for students on college campuses. We're taking the imperative to meet the moment. as anti-Semitism continues to rise since October 7th. So tell us more about the work that Jewish on Campus does, online, offline, and on campus.
Absolutely. So Jewish on Campus is an organization that I founded going into my sophomore year of college, because what we noticed was that students were going to campus, number one, unprepared to experience anti-Semitism, and number two, unprepared to react. I am from Long Island, New York, as I'm sure half of this room is. And I got to campus, and I'd never once been the only Jew in the room. And that changed very quickly when I got to college. I went to the University of Chicago, and I graduated last year. And what I noticed very quickly was that my experiences, though challenging, weren't unique. At first, they were very easy to say, okay, maybe this person was joking, maybe I'm overreacting. But very quickly, I found myself not wanting to say that my family was from Israel, not wanting to talk about that part of my family history that I'm very proud of. And we noticed something needed to change. So we initially began with not really the clear intention to create a nonprofit, but really with the concept that if you think about where students are, especially amidst COVID at the time when we were existing really in the virtual space, social media is both a tremendous opportunity and tremendous challenge. We can educate and learn about cultures and people quite different from our own, and we can be exposed to dangerous, anti-Semitism, racism, sexism, misogyny, etc., and all of these different things that are able to spread so rapidly online. And we began to grow and experience that we could make more change, even though we were far younger than a lot of other folks in the field. And so we decided to create a nonprofit that since has been doing tremendous work across the landscape. We've been really involved in the Title VI process. We filed a complaint against the University of Vermont, which actually ended up being the first resolved by the Biden administration, cited in the White House National Strategy, and one that led to tremendous change on campus, followed by more complaints before and after October 7th. We were, along with ADL, big pieces of working together with the administration to create that national strategy, been doing work on the data science front, and through this exciting new partnership, continuing our campus programming with the idea that, of course, there is a lot of anti-Semitism through the form of hatred, but there also is a lot of anti-Semitism through the framework of ignorance. Yeah. People come to campus wanting to do good, and they don't have exposure to the Jewish story, to the reason why we have connection to Israel, to the root of anti-Semitism as conspiracy. And so we're really excited to be working together with ADL to fix that challenge and to bring education to campuses, meeting students where they are and meeting the moment now.
Yeah, I love it. I think the partnership is so important for education. And Hannah, I'm just sort of thinking about you and thinking, are Jewish students on campus equipped to handle anti-Semitism right now? Like, what resources do you need? Because I think we would like to help.
Mm-hmm. I'm smiling because I'm thinking of yes and. Yes, we are getting a lot of shit done right now as students. I didn't think I could plan a press conference in 2 days. I've never been a professional in communication, and yet I did that last semester. I've never testified to Congress before, and yet I did that last week, and I'm now lobbying all these different people in Congress to update legislation.
Wow.
But I want to pause because my key hypothesis was that when we look at the Jewish community at large and these Jewish students on campus, you need Jewish students who will host a Shabbat dinner. I lived in Moishe House right out of college. That was an incredible experience, and I now know how to host 30 people for an event, which is great. You also have groups like APAC on campus, which care about the US-Israel relationship, or you have Hasbara type groups, and they're trying to tell Israel's story of JOC. My key hypothesis, though, is that the moment we're in, it's one thing to have the hostility that you spoke to and the discrimination. It's another to actually do something about it. So last semester, I was at first in my MBA bubble. Then I saw all these different hate incidents targeting mostly undergrads at Cal, and no one was helping them. I thought the project manager, if I use business speak, would be the Hillel director, and his focus, rightfully so, was to create a safe Jewish space on campus for all Jewish students, whether you're left, right, or in the center. So we didn't have a project manager. I then attempted to work as a project manager on our campus, and I then found on all these other campuses across the country, either they might have a project manager or they might not. And if there was a project manager, there was no one affiliation or organization that everyone was a part of. So my question then became, how do we connect the different project managers? And then once you have the project managers connected, how do you apply a consistent strategy to actually create change? Strategy being, you have a university, who are the different stakeholders? Sure, you have students, you have alumni, you have faculty, you have large donors, you have local community members, but then how do you actually coordinate these people to be focused on the same cause and then create the right products and pressure points to actually get universities to cross the chasm? So that was a lot, but I guess to answer your question around the skill set, there's a specific organizational change management leadership skill set, a lot of jargon, that we need to be teaching students that we've not been taught before.
Activism by fire can have a little more education to it. I love it. Just thinking about what you have all gone through, you're still here. I know because I was with you before, you are all still very excited to be here and to still be engaged in the fight. I mean, what gives you hope? What keeps you kind of going? Maybe we'll start with you and go down if you don't mind.
I've never seen this before. We need to do something. Now's the moment. I've been doing Jewish advocacy work for 10, 15 plus years, and now I'm meeting with people I never thought I would meet with who want to join the cause. And that to me tells me that now's the moment that matters.
Yeah, in large part echoing what you said, I think we're obviously used to seeing some very horrifying stories because that's what gets the most clicks and the most excitement. But in small moments and large ones, there also are moments of solidarity, of being listened to as Jewish people. I think a big key piece for me, I mean, October 11th, after the atrocities just a few days earlier, a group of Jewish leaders, including Jewish leaders from the ADL, were with the president and various Jewish community leaders. That was something that was immediate. We didn't have to wait to have that support, and we didn't have to feel like we were excluded as Jews, as young people, as women. We all had a seat at the table. And we don't see those moments of allyship necessarily amplified, but they're important. Just 2 weeks ago, the US mission to the UN hosted a roundtable with Jewish and Palestinian leaders that I was honored to be a part of. And we don't see moments like that. We see the tension, but there also are moments of allyship and support that we need to keep being examples of, because the more that we share that as normal, as expected, it will become normal and expected. We need to foster a culture of inclusion, of listening to one another, and of validating the Jewish experience, and that's what will make it become the norm on campuses, online, around the country.
We recently hosted my center a survivor from the Nova Music Festival massacre, and she was asked, how do you keep going? And she said, in times of darkness, turn up the light. And coming here and seeing all of you and meeting the students on campus who come to me regularly and thank me for what I'm doing and ask me to help them, and meeting a whole bunch of new friends on my university campus as well, and a little bit around the world, has been turning up the light for me. I am really, really hopeful that we can find new solutions for university campuses. And you had asked me before what I recommended doing, and I just want to mention a few of those things because I really didn't hit on that hard enough. I think if I had to pick one thing that I would recommend, if I could make one change on university campuses, it would at this point be mandatory Holocaust education for every single university campus. It is absolutely critical. My students don't even remember, and most of them, many of them were not alive on 9/11. I'm struggling to get them to understand that. They do not understand the Holocaust. They do not understand the context out of which Israel came, so that's critical. I would demand transparency about Qatari money. This needs to be, this is a whole nother topic. But that needs to be clear. University administrators need to be clear about how much they have been taking in from Qatar and possibly others. I see we're out of time. There's a long list, but the last thing I will just mention is that as important as academic freedom and free expression, open expression on campuses are, it must not be an excuse and a pass-through for anti-Semitism. So we need to figure out And it is absolutely possible how to preserve academic freedom and free expression while teaching our faculty and our students how not to be anti-Semitic and how to fight anti-Semitism when they see it. It is absolutely possible. We need to do that immediately.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I say one more thing?
Certainly that.
If you want to support students right now and you're in this room, join the cause. The infrastructure that previously we think to go to, Hillel Chabad, those are great. And find alternative ways to reach out to faculty, students, email them and ask how you can help. You know donors, you know people who are experts in different skill sets. That's what students need. So please do.
Thank you. So, courage, allyship, meeting the moment. I just thank you for being here, for being our friends, for being you. We really appreciate everything you're bringing to this and for bringing us along. So, thank you.